Welcome to Central Georgia Focus. I'm your host today, Frederick Price. This month of November is National Native American Heritage Month. It's a time when we celebrate the culture, contributions, and history of the first people of this nation. For Central Georgia, it is a special connection with the Muskogee Creek Indian Nation. And today we will talk about the resilience of the rich Native American culture, its impact on history today, and its path moving forward. So our guest today is Tracy Rivas, Director of Advocacy for the Muskogee Mounds National Park and Preserve Initiative. And later in the show, we will hear from the principal chef, David Hill, of the Muskogee Nation. But of course, let's start with an introduction. Tracy, kind of tell us about yourself and your role as the director.
Well, Fasen, or Agalasan, depending on when people watch this, Dijihal, Lente, Keda, Tracy Rivas, SAT, Sahe Safani, SAT. So my name is Tracy Rivas. I am two tribes. I am Muskogee and Yuchi, two very separate tribes, but from this original area. And yeah, I'm the Director of Advocacy. I moved here a couple years ago, left the nation. I was Chief of Staff for Chief David Hill. And I kind of got sent here to help with the initiative to make sure we restore the tribal voice back to the land. This is our ancestral homeland. This area here in Macon was actually a capital city for us. And so the mounds being here, there are so many things that this community knows that the mounds are here. They just may not know all the history. And so I was sent here to help shepherd that in and to work with OMPPI specifically and to create Georgia's first national park.
Oh, good. So what's the restoration process, if you will, look like in terms of your advocacy work? Tell me more about how you go about doing that.
Yeah, so one of the very first things that we learned when I first got to Macon is that so many people have no idea truly who we are. We've been gone for about 200 years now in Oklahoma. Removal, 1830s was Indian removal, and we were all sent to Oklahoma. There are 0 federally recognized tribes remaining in the state of Georgia, 0. It was illegal to be American Indian in the state of Georgia until around the 1970s on a state law. And then in the 1980s, the federal Indian law was repealed. So it was illegal for us to be here. However, you know, we were all sent to Oklahoma and have been gone. So when we first got back here, when I've come back, people don't really know who we are. I had family that worked at the park in the 1970s. And, you know, if you ever go out to the park, you're going to see my aunt's photo. It's a large photo of an indigenous woman, and that's my aunt. She worked here and lived here in Macon for 5 years. And so I'm kind of following in those footsteps. And so when I got here, that was one of the first things we did is like, let's educate this community. Let's do some disruptors. Let's help people to understand who the tribes were. And I have a very tragic, traumatic story for me, which really makes it so heartfelt for me. That I got here, I was with the nation and I came to the park and I had Chief Hill, former Chief James Floyd with me. And we're doing a tour. And I'm talking to a child that just came through that had done a tour for that day. Every kid in Bibb County goes to the mounds, right? In the local area, everyone goes there, but they may not quite understand the history. And I was talking to a child who had just come through it, and I said, do you know the name of the tribes who used to live here? And he said, yeah, the Indians. And I said, okay, well, yeah, I mean, that's a name that we go by, but we all had individual names. And he said, yeah, the Indians. And I said, well, but we had names. He said, no, the Indians don't exist anymore. They're not here anymore. And it was heartbreaking. And I have chief, and I have second chief, and I have our language. And I'm like, okay, because we've been gone, so many people don't realize the history. And the park has the indigenous celebration, but sometimes in previous years, there were representation from tribes that weren't specifically to the people who used to live here. There are 574 federally recognized tribes across the country, and we're all very unique and very different, and all of our ceremonies are different. So the park does a great job in the indigenous celebration, but you know, if you don't go and you may not know that we're still modern and living and that we're still a part of an evolving society. And so that was really the biggest thing, was we need to re-educate the community, and we do it by being upfront. I've offered myself to people to answer any question, regardless if people think it's ignorant or if they just don't know. I'll answer any question, because that is how we grow as a community together, is to help re-educate each other. We start with where we are today, and that is what the park is doing. It is bringing a reconciliation of story, of people, of healing. And so creating this park, bringing the indigenous culture back, bringing it back into the modern purview of Macon today is really what we're doing.
So needless to say, Native American Heritage Month has a special meaning to you.
It is extremely important to me for a lot of reasons. One being that in Georgia, obviously we know that with the park bill being live and moving forward in the nation being able to come back, it's important to see us as modern people, but it's also, we've been left off of everything. If you look at any statistics, oftentimes we are always considered the other. We aren't even ranked in any of that. And then you hear about us when it's something negative. You hear about us when we talk about mascot issues and the controversy around that. And that's not one thing that I want to talk about, but it is something that you hear us when it becomes controversial. You don't hear us about us in the modern context of all the great things that tribes are today, what we do, what we've endeavored to persevere in with our language, with our culture, with our ceremonies, everything that we are today, and the beautiful stories of who Indigenous people are. And so Native American Heritage Month really gives us the opportunity to study 574 all across the country that are left out, and we are sovereign nations. And a lot of people don't know that, and they don't know what that means. So we don't say that we're members of tribes. It is not a club. It is not something that I don't pay my dues and I get kicked out. It is a citizenry that I am born into a nation, just like you are citizens of a country. We are a sovereign nation. Our land within our boundaries of our reservation in Oklahoma. We have our own laws, our own law enforcement, our own schools. All of that is within our own, and the state's laws do not necessarily come into it. They cannot govern our people. They can govern rights of way and highways and different things, but we are a sovereign nation, and so there are 574 of those across the country, and we're all unique. And so this month gives us that opportunity, but we kind of get a little early into that with Indigenous Peoples Day, Columbus Day kind of being renamed across the country as Indigenous Peoples Day in October, leading into November. And here in Macon, we go September, October, November, because we go the Indigenous celebration and then October, and now we're in the whole month. And so it's an exciting time.
Well, why do you think it is such a challenge to get people to understand this? I mean, that story that honestly is very disconcerting with the young child at the park. Where's the disconnect there?
Honestly, it's our education system, and it's not a bash on teachers. It's not anything negative there. It's the curriculum. The curriculum that is being taught has erased us in every way possible. So I do private tours through the advocacy work that we do with the park at the mounds, and I talk about. Did you know, if for arbitrary sake, if we said Columbus landed in 1492? Which he did not land in this area, and we know that. But for arbitrary sake, if you use those numbers, and removal is 1830, right? So there's a lot of time in there that people were here living amongst each other. There's hundreds of years of people living amongst each other that you're not taught. What's taught oftentimes is so simplified, is the settlers came, and then all of a sudden the people started leaving, and then we all left. Right, and it's this one glossed over sentence that says, you know, they landed at Plymouth Rock, all the Indians left, and they went off, and there we go, we're gone. But there's hundreds of years of people trading, especially here in Georgia, amongst each other, living amongst each other, speaking each other's languages, that happened here, and that's a history that has not been told. And then when removal happened, Trail of Tears was not one route into Oklahoma. It happened over 10 to 15 years, even longer. Of removal all the way into the state of Oklahoma. Women went one way, men went another way. There's a lot of history that's not taught, and it's not that we willingly left, it's what happened. So for example, the very first treaty that was signed here for our people was 1733. It gave up the entire coastline of Georgia. So all of the islands were all lost in 1733, and that was a treaty that was signed with the British Crown, right? So Georgia didn't exist, the United States didn't exist at that point. So 1733, we lose that. The final treaty is around the 1830s. So the 100 years, we lost the entire state of Georgia from one coastline, moving all of us into the Alabama-Georgia coastline, or that boundary line, before removal began, sending us all to Oklahoma. So that history of 100 years of removal isn't taught either. And that is specifically Georgia history, and that's not taught either. And so there's a lot of things there that I think that there's a lot of misinformation, and that is really where the park has the opportunity to help to re-educate the community, to grow, to make people a part of what's happening today as we create new history today.
Certainly going to take advantage of those missed opportunities to learn. We're going to take a short break. We're going to continue this very insightful conversation. Stay with us. When we return, we will take a look back at the Macon delegation's educational trip to Muskogee, Oklahoma. Welcome back. We are celebrating National Native American Heritage Month and joined by Tracy Rivas, the Director of Advocacy for the Muskogee Mounds National Park and Preserve Initiative. Last year, Macon leaders and community members took a special trip designed to strengthen the ties between the Muskogee Creek Nation. Liz Fabian with the Murphy Center for Collaborative Journalism traveled along and shared this recap and interview with Principal Chief David Hill.
What does it mean to you to have this delegation come from Macon?
You know, to have a delegation from Macon come here, I mean, it's, you know, that's our original homelands in Macon, Georgia, and creating that partnership. I know it's definitely helped when Tracy Rivas, my former chief of staff, has started working there, and she's created a lot of assistance there helping, you know, and it's been great. We were able to raise the flag there at the Capitol, which meant a lot to us, to even acknowledge that, hey, this originally was Muskogee Creek Nation. And during that time, I was able to meet some other delegates or individuals that really want to work together with Creek Nation. They see the opportunities that we have, and you know, I think that's a lot of things that the state of Oklahoma sometimes, I don't want to say take for granted, but you know, there's opportunities there, and definitely like to see come to our headquarters or here at River Spear. I mean, the opportunities we have to working together.
You mentioned in your remarks maybe building something like this in Macon.
You never know.
What would you like to see the future bring for the Muskogee Creek Nation and Macon-Bibb County?
You know, a lot of it, as the Muskogee Mounds are there, we visited, even in the past, even other states, Oxford, Emory, Horseshoe Bend, just different locations that they want the true story told of Muskogee Creek Nation. You know, the Trail of Tears only shows just a little bit, just tells you a little bit what happened. But you know, there's more to it. You know, as far as my family, we're fluent, different from my wife's. You know, my wife's original, her family ancestor goes down to William Williford, who was Red Eagle, and they had the family Bible that came on the Trail of Tears. So she was asking me, why is your stuff not written down? Well, ours was just told orally because they were just fluent speakers. I mean, they only spoke the language, so everything that was told to us was just hearing it from them. And those are the stories or the traditional, the history, you know, that's never been told. And it's always great to go back to Macon because you'll have individuals that, you know, tell us about Muskogee Creek. And I can't remember during the Okmulgee, the bicycle ride that we had back then. We took two charter buses there, in which my mom was one of them that rode. And the tallest mound that's there, she stayed at the foothill, but my uncle was at the very top. And he hooped and hollered, you know, as we do now, and she hooped and hollered back. And just thinking that, you know, it's probably been over 200-300 years since that was last done. You know, just things like that. The history, we want to tell the true history of Muskogee Creek Nation. A lot of citizens passed away on the Trail of Tears. We've also had individuals ask, it's such a beautiful place, why did y'all leave? You know, not knowing the history, we weren't asked to leave. We didn't want to come. We were forced to come. But those are kind of history that's never been told, so it definitely helps when we come back home or to original homelands to share our history. And that's all we want to do. And also creating that partnership with Macon, it's been great. You know, I'm just looking forward to where just today, you know, when they visit the college, visit our headquarters, the opportunities that we can bring to help Macon. You know, I'm just looking forward to it.
So much history shared there, and even Macon getting some representation inside of the council house. So we were talking during this package. You were kind of telling me, everything that was going on. But you shared a lot with visitors too during this time. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so it was really important as a part of the education that I talked about earlier, is to take people, not only to educate them here in Macon, but to take them to Oklahoma to what happened at the end of the trail as we made it into Oklahoma. And so it was an incredible opportunity that we had over 50 folks that came, and they got to stay at the nation's River Spirit Casino, which is located in Tulsa, which comes from a tribal word, just like all the words around this state, but Oklahoma has the same. And then they made the trip down to Okmulgee, Oklahoma, which the Okmulgee River, this being a capital city here, when we made it into Oklahoma, Okmulgee is the capital city within our reservation for our tribal headquarters. So everyone here got to go, and they got to meet the nation. They got to go to our properties. They got to go to our ranch, try traditional foods, learn about our tribal government, our tribal college, our modern economics. And the council house is really significant because that was our first council house in our government style in Oklahoma, in Okmulgee. And it had our original form of government, which was the House of Kings and the House of Warriors. And it was a building that unfortunately we lost, the nation lost, and we had to buy it back from the city, which we bought back quite expensively, had to buy back and restore. And so now we use it as a education opportunity for the community and for our own citizens to come in and learn our history and everything there. And so we do still have our modern government there today. We even have a mound building that replicates one of the mounds here because we were the mound builder people that went into Oklahoma. And just like the Earth Lodge here is where council, our legislative body, would have sat, just like the House of Kings and House of Warriors. And our mound building in Oklahoma, that is where our legislative national council sits today. And so we keep those connections. And so I think it was really, really exciting for people here to be able to go and see themselves reflected in Oklahoma, because you walk in and you see pictures of Macon all over. And then, to go to the council oak tree, and the council oak tree is so significant. It is the tree that was standing long before we made it into Oklahoma. We make it there, and it is on the highest hill in the Tulsa area overlooking the Arkansas River. Still stands today. It's over 200 plus years old, and that is where we buried our medicine, and that what became our home.
Wow.
So one of the ceremonial grounds is there, and so it was extremely significant, and everyone got to go and hear from Raylan Butler, the Secretary of the Nation, and hear how significant it is still for us today.
Very, very significant. We're going to continue our conversation. We'll take a quick break. We're back in just a moment. Welcome back. We're continuing our conversation with Tracy Reeves. So something big happened recently, the street sign unveiling of that. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we started this from one of the very first trips that we took people from Macon to Oklahoma. They got to see in Okmulgee, Oklahoma, the downtown street signs are in English and in Muskogee. And so Gary Wheat was on that trip, the director for Visit Macon, and he said this is a great opportunity for Macon. And so we started working on it. It took a couple years, and this fall, the street signs in downtown Macon are supposed to have a new revamping, and they're going to be in English and in Muskogee. And we did the unveiling during the celebration when Chief Hill was here and the nation was here, and it was an exciting day. So last year we raised the flag. This year we're doing the street sign unveiling, and our ambassador for the nation mentioned what's so exciting about this when you name a street, it's not just putting a name up, but a lot of the roads in Georgia, in the state of Georgia, were our old trading routes. And so those trading routes, those paths were our roads in between. And so then the Macon roads here, there's some of that's there. There are words, there are language throughout the state of Georgia. So we're bringing that here to Macon just because we've got the park and the connection. And Okmulgee is one of our words along the Okmulgee River. So why not bring that language back to life here as we continue to educate the community?
What's that saying? Everything old is new again?
Yeah, right? I mean, the 90s are back, the 80s are back, the 1800s are back.
Well, I mean, but for you, I mean, this is a dream, I imagine. Now it's come to fruition. What's that like to see this in real life now?
Honestly, I am beyond humbled to be able to continue the legacy of my family. Not only just my more recent family that I know, but my ancestors, right? To go all the way back, to be able to speak that language again in this land regularly, to make it so that our folks from the nation feel comfortable coming back here. And I will tell you the amazing thing that Macon has done, and I have to always give Macon its kudos in this. The nation has always come back because these are our mound sites and our people are buried here. But we haven't always felt comfortable coming back. Today, what we're doing in this genuine re-education and reconciliation is truly making a difference. That when our people come back, they say they feel more comfortable and they feel like they're a part of the community, seeing themselves reflected.
Wow.
So not only do they see the flag here, we've had an art exhibit that the new one's about to open this Friday, in the Bright City, and that's going to have an indigenous look to it as well. So seeing art, seeing different modern things conveyed in Macon, and so people feel connected to the land again, and there's a healing here.
Yes.
And every person comes back with a different story, whether it's they come back angry, they can't come back curious, or maybe they just want to know, and it just gives them something. Everyone has a different desire in their soul that they need to come back to this land. And I tell people all the time, this land is older than all of us, and it has not only had our stories, it's housed all the other stories that have ever been here after, all the caretakers after, and so that land is so important. And so you cannot erase one story because they're all woven together in that land, and that is what Macon is doing. It's allowing us to reconnect this community back here, and allow them to get whatever healing they need. And so I am loving what's happening, the street sign, the flag, the park, everything. Macon has just been incredible, yes.
Now we got a couple of minutes here. I want to get to the theme, recognizing 100 years of citizenship and the fight for the right to vote, 1924, 2024. Can you talk about the theme and the Citizenship Act of 1924?
Yeah, crazy enough, we were not considered citizens of the United States and did not receive the right to vote until after women, until 1924. And a lot of it goes back to the founding of this country. In the Declaration of Independence, it lists us as merciless Indian savages. That is how we are listed. And then the Constitution talks about the no taxation. And so legally, there are a lot of people that felt that because we've signed treaties and that we are sovereign, that does not make us citizens of the United States. And so there was a special bill that was passed in the House and Senate and passed in 1924, signed by President Coolidge, I believe, and giving us officially the right to vote. However, that came because so many indigenous people have fought on behalf of the United States in wars all throughout history, and more indigenous people fight in wars than any other representation. And the deadliest battle in this country, still to this day, on the soil, was an indigenous battle in Alabama, the Battle of Horseshoe Bend. And the indigenous people have always fought, and because of that, 1924, they said we finally got to recognize these people who fought for us, and we've taken all their land and give them the right to vote. We didn't have the ability still at that day in 1924 to run our own governments. We didn't receive that right back until the 1930s and then the 1970s. 1975, the self-determination and education allowed us to start running our governments again and providing for our own people. So indigenous people, there's a lot of history, more recent history, that people don't know how much we've had to fight to even have rights to protect our own people. But that right to vote was incredible for us, but it wasn't received until 1924. So this is the 100 years of it, and so it has become the theme for this year's Native American Heritage Month.
Well, thank you so much for all this insightful information. I mean, unfortunately, we don't have enough time to get to it,
Yeah.
but I certainly learned a lot, and I'm sure people that are watching this learned a lot too, and they can always contact you if they want to learn more. Tracy, thank you so much for being here, and thank you so much for watching Central Georgia Focus. Have a great day. We'll see you next time.